thing you'll notice is that there's a computer here, but I'm not looking at it. It's just sort of half open, and I deliberately didn't plug it into the TV because the whole idea with push is that everything you want to do and need to do from the instrument, you can do from the instrument. You don't really need to deal with the computer at all. The computer's in the background sort of churning away and doing all of the magic, but the hands-on experience is really from the hardware. So, I mean, the idea for push came out of the desire to make an instrument that you could play, because computers are kind of boring and people sort of sit at the computer and lean in and look like they're checking their mail, and it creates this feeling of not being musical. So the idea with this is we wanted something that was really great for beat making in every way that you can make beats, sort of real-time playing, 16 pad style, and then also step sequencing. Also for playing notes, playing with sounds, loading sounds and tweaking sound parameters, and then finally sort of organizing all the material into music. So push is really smart, and it knows what kind of instrument is loaded at the time. So as I switch between different types of tracks, the whole pad arrangement changes based on what's being loaded. So we'll start with the drum side. This quadrant of pads here is set up in a kind of 16 pad workflow, so for real-time playing. And of course these are touch sensitive. You see they're a little smaller than the kind of typical 16 pad thing because we have 64 of them, and so we needed to have that, otherwise it would be like this gigantic footprint. So we wanted 16 pads that you could play, and then these 16 pads are for adjusting the length of the loop that you're working on. So each of these buttons corresponds to one bar, and as I press a button, it basically starts a step sequencer that's running. If I press and hold a button, now I've created a 4-bar loop. So it's as simple as that. And then these top row, this top set of 32 pads is for step sequencing. And as you saw, there was a moving playhead. It's running at a resolution that's assigned by this column of buttons here. So it's everything from quarter notes to 30-second note triplets. And these are red here because when it's in triplets mode, it's divided into a group of 6. So I usually leave it at 16th notes, so it's running in 16ths for 2 bars at 16th notes. So I'll just step sequence some 8th note hi-hats. So, I can plug in the occasional 16th note too. And then I can switch to a real-time playing mode too. I can punch in recording with this record button here. So I'll just overdub some kick drum on this and wait for it to come around. Actually, I'm going to undo that and wait for it to track to the beginning of the bar. And I can quantize this, or I can leave it loose if I want. I have my quantization set right now to 78%, so it's sort of a partial humanization, but I'll just press that to sort of tighten things up a little bit. And punch in some backbeats. So that's a pretty quick way of making beats, and then I'll punch out of the recording mode. Now there's also a repeat mode, sort of classic, which is also now adjusted. The resolution is again adjusted by the value that you have here. And this we can record with real-time swing. So we have a knob that's dedicated for swing. It's currently set to 0. I can dial it up to something ridiculous. And it's only applying to the note that I'm currently touching. So at this tempo, something like 27 is good. These are all touch encoders, so I can get a readout of the value by tapping the top of it, and it shows up in the display, and then when I let go, it's done. Now, these are velocity sensitive, and they're also pressure sensitive, so as I lean in, I can add more, and then when I want to record that, I just punch in. So I can do this kind of breathing thing, and punch out of that. Cool. So that's, kind of a quick overview of how the beat stuff works. And now I can move between tracks by using these cursor keys. So now I'm in a pitched mode. I've got basically a piano set up. And this is where, for me personally, I find that we've sort of done something really new here. We have an entirely new way of thinking about how to represent pitches on a grid. So I'm going to enter our scales mode here. And maybe the most interesting thing to do is sort of back away from the weird stuff we've done to the more conventional stuff. So I can switch between what we call chromatic and in-key mode. And in chromatic mode, you basically represented all of the notes of a traditional piano layout on the grid, and the colors then tell you something about the notes that you're playing. So these blue pads now are the tonic of the key that we're in, which is C major. You can see that. You can pick a key center here and then scale types using these two buttons. So the blue buttons are the key. The white, the lit pads are the other notes in the scale. And then the black pads are the non-diatonic notes, the notes that are out of the key. And in this case, that's C major. So we move to the right in half steps and up in perfect fourths. And did you guys actually watch that movie? He's asking you if you guys saw the demo that I did. No, it's cool. Don't worry about it either way. The kind of traditional demo that I do for this is that I can play the opening to giant steps. Which is cool. I mean, you know, it's fine. You can play that on this instrument. You can play it on a piano or whatever. But what's interesting about this instrument for playing that kind of material is that on a piano, to play a really chromatic pattern like that, you have to teach your hands to do really weird things. And then you only know it in one key. So as soon as you want to shift it to another key, you have to learn an entirely new fingering, because the position of the black keys on the piano changes depending on what your key center is, but not on push. Because the pads are totally symmetrical, if I want to move that up a whole step, I just move over, and then I play exactly the same fingering pattern. And I can do that anywhere on the instrument. So once you get a pattern under your hands, which takes practice, I mean, you have to spend the time to learn it, but once you know it in every key, which is totally amazing. It's sort of like playing a guitar, where you can shift up and down on the neck, and the fingering patterns sort of transition between scales. So that's how you can play in the chromatic mode, but then when you switch to the in-key mode, it's basically the same. The pad colors are telling you, again, that these are the tonic, and the other colored pads, and now there's only colored pads, are the other notes that are in the key. The non-diatonic notes are thrown away now, so you can only play diatonically. Again, you're moving now by diatonic scale degrees to the right and up in diatonic fourths as you move up. So again, everything is sort of infinitely transposable. Once I know the pattern for a triad, I can play all the diatonic triads in this key just by playing exactly the same fingering position. And then once you learn sort of interesting harmonic structures, those are also infinitely transposable. And what I like, being a sort of wannabe jazz guy, is that the way this is all built in fourths is that for this kind of fourth-based harmony, you can get around just by playing in a column. So a scale then in this diatonic mode is 3 notes to the right, 1 note up. And to change scales now, I just switch to a different key. So I was in C major, now I'm in B major, and now I'm in E mixolydian. So if any of you did the kind of music school route, like 90% of the work that you had to do in the practice room learning scales is done. You learn one fingering pattern and then transpose it wherever you want using these buttons. Or if you want to make things interesting, you can keep things in the chromatic mode, so you can switch between this chromatic and in-key mode. Okay, so that's a look at how things work playing pitches. Now, getting to sounds, like so far you've only heard a piano. If I press our browse button, I can get into an environment where I can load new sounds. So let me pick a different sound. I can scroll using these encoders between a bunch of different types of built-in sounds. And then this set of encoders here allows me to actually choose the sound I want. When I find one, press the green button to load it. And then I can switch back to our device mode, and these 8 encoders now allow me to tweak the parameters of the sound. And again, if I tap on them, I can get a readout. The numerical value for the parameter is shown here always, but then I can get this kind of scaling that appears and disappears when I touch the encoders. Just to give you a sense of like how much headroom you have on a particular parameter to move around. So if I wanted to record a pattern now, I could just start the drums playing again. And then when I'm ready, I can punch in. Oops. So I have a pattern that's too long now. I over-recorded, so I can press the clip button to here, and I can assign the length. It was set to 3 bars, so now I can switch it back to 2 bars. Let me quantize that too. Now, if I want to change the sort of timbre of the sound over time, I can tweak these parameters and also record those changes. When I let go, all that stuff that I just tweaked can be recorded. When I punch out, it's still part of the clip. And now I can switch over to another track where I have the bass sound. Okay, I don't like that, so I'll re-record it. And again, set the clip length. You can also record in a fixed length mode. So currently I was recording endlessly. I can set this fixed length to record only a set of bars. So I want to record 2 bars, for example, instead of recording forever. Yeah. But you can say in fixed length mode or punch out of fixed length mode. And so finally, once you've got a bunch of material together, I mean, imagine I've been doing this for an hour and just sort of playing and putting together clips, I can move to our session mode. Everything you saw so far was in note mode. I can switch to session mode, and then you can sort of think of zooming out so that the pads are now representing whole clips, whole patterns of material. And the ones that I just recorded are here. So I can start and stop these independently of each other. And they do what live does, which is start at the beginning of the next bar. And then I've got a bunch more that I recorded down here, and I can fire them all as a scene. So now what these were representing step resolution in our previous, in note mode. In session mode, these act as scene launching buttons. And of course I can mix all this, so I have a volumes mode if I want to fade things in and out. And of course that's all recordable as automation too. Back to note mode and switch between these tracks, and the green lights that are lighting up now are showing me the notes that I recorded before. You can see that some of them are duplicated. One thing I didn't talk about, you know, because we have this symmetrical pad layout, one note can often be played in a lot of different ways, and if you play a pad it turns green, but that same note will appear in other places on the pad grid as you play. So, I mean, to wrap things up, we wanted Push to be an instrument that you could play, to give you a really tactile, hands-on way of making new music from scratch. What's happening in the background is all happening on the laptop, but you never have to look at the laptop. When you're making new music with this, you can play or program beats, you can switch and play or program pitched material. You have a whole different way of dealing with pitched information. You have access to all of the sounds that you have installed in Live, and then also working with Live Session View, a way of getting around through materials. So the whole idea with this is to give people a way of working on music without having to stare into a screen, but just to keep your hands on the instrument.